Hi everyone, it's Derek here. I'm just going to show you how to write a prescription. So with writing a prescription, what we normally do is we go to the current prescriptions that the patient has had. So if you could click on that, and you can see a list of current medications. If you have a look at the list, the ones that are not up to date, that maybe are overdue, are highlighted in red, so you can see that the elapsed date is in the past. Whereas things which are still up to date are in black, so you can see that the elapsed date is in the future. If you have a look at this screen, you can see the list of medications here and the strength that's been prescribed, any sort of doses that have been recommended, and the frequency. And then if you have a look on the other end of the screen, you can see, this is very important, you can have a look and see what the PBS category for this prescription is. So you've got regular prescriptions, which are listed as P for PBS scripts. You've got private prescriptions, which have the little dollar sign. You've got restricted benefit prescriptions, which have an R, and then you've got authority prescriptions, which are listed as an A. It's very similar for DVA type prescriptions as well. So let's have a look at how we prescribe. If you wanted to prescribe some medications that the patient has already been prescribed previously, what you could do is you could just double click on the medication that you want to prescribe. So let's say you wanted to prescribe the aspirin as well as the clopidogrel. You can just double click on that and double click on this one, and you can see that a P shows up in the very left column. So the P means that it's been marked for printing. So the next time you press the print button, a prescription with all of those prescriptions will come out of the printer if you've set your printer correctly. If you press that, it'll come out. If you have a prescription that is an authority prescription, so this mirtazapine is an authority script because it's an increased quantity, you can double click on that one, and then it'll come up with the authority approval number, authority approval dialog screen. So if you ring up that number and you put in the approval number and you adjust the quantities to whatever you've applied for, that will approve that prescription and it'll all be fine. If the prescription isn't or hasn't been fully approved, and you want to write it as a private script item, you can click on private here, and that'll adjust it to a private item, and there won't be the authority or PBS restrictions. Let me just cancel that. Alternatively, you can change the PBS category for the prescription by right-clicking on it and finding change PBS category, and that allows you to change it to whatever you need. Although you do have to stay within the guidelines for PBS restricted and PBS authority prescriptions. Okay. If you want to prescribe something that is different, that isn't on the list of previous or long-standing medications, this is what you do. So you can either click on this RX button, and what that'll do is it'll call up a list of favorite medications that you've set up, or alternatively you could right click on this screen anywhere and then click on new item. So when you click on new item, it allows you to choose a prescription to add to the prescribing list. So what you could do is could prescribe. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to prescribe some metformin for this person. And then you get a drop-down list of the different forms of metformin. So let's say we want to start off with just a 500 milligram slow-release tablet, and give the patient one a day. You can double click on that one, and that'll call up the dose dialog box. What you could do is you could put in your dose here. So I might just want to prescribe 1 per day. So 1 daily, and then you can put in some other instructions here. So you could put it with meals or after meals, or in the morning, or in the evening, or whatever, or as required. That'd be perfectly fine too. With prescriptions, if you're wanting to print it out, just make sure that this print button has been ticked, or if you've written a prescription by hand, you can use that. Or if you're just recording a script that someone else has prescribed elsewhere, this is handy to populate the patient's medical record. Now, very important is this section of the dose dialog box. This differentiates between long-term prescriptions like antihypertensives, or short-term medications like antibiotics. So with metformin, I think it's a long-term prescription, and what that'll mean is that once the expiry date of the long-term medication comes along, the script will turn up in red, but it won't ask you to remove it from the list. I'm just going to, for illustration purposes, click on limited script, so you can have a look and see what a limited prescription looks like. Then click OK. You might remember the favorites of favorite prescriptions that you have. If you click on this, it will add it to the favorites on the drop-down list on this button, so that you can choose it as something that you prescribe frequently. So, I might prescribe metformin 500 milligrams slow release daily very frequently. So I might just click on that, so it's straightforward for me to prescribe it again next time. Click OK, and then it'll show up the quantity dialog box, so you can see the quantity and repeats that you want to prescribe. And there, so I just want to prescribe 120 at this stage. You'll see that the default for a limited prescription is just for a single script with no repeats, whereas the default for a long-term prescription is for the maximum repeats. I'll click OK. And then you can enter a reason for this. So the patient has diabetes, so let's click on diabetes here, or alternatively, you can enter something through here, or enter something in as a free text. But we'll just choose diabetes at this stage. Because it's a new prescription, but it's an ongoing problem, you might want to save it as a reason for the contact. So this is the same box as the reason for contacting the medical record, but you probably don't want to save it in the past history, because you don't want 2 copies of this to show up in the past medical history. So I'll click OK, and then close this, and if I press print, it'll print out all those prescriptions for you.